Welcome to this Filmora Masterclass. I am Sean Kitching, a full-time travel YouTuber and filmmaker. Today we're going to be covering some structure and cutting techniques within Filmora to create your ideal travel video. Once we have all of our footage selected and the clips that we are most likely to use in our final project, it's time that we can actually start getting a rough cut together. Now there's a few key techniques that I like to use when doing this to ensure the easiest, smoothest process and also to make my video the best possible outcome it can be. So once we're over in Filmora, you can see this little demo video I have here of this simple little scene from a recent travel trip I did. And the first thing I'm going to start doing is getting all of my clips in a rough order that I think they would work. So if there's anything that I filmed in sequences, like multiple angles or takes of the same scene, I like to get those going nicely next to each other. Maybe one works with a wide and then a close-up and then a medium. Maybe the next one is a close-up and then a wide. However you guys want to structure this to your preference, but I like to kind of get them all into some sort of rough layout so I can see how my video is going to look. If I have certain scenes that I think would work well for my ending, I'm going to start putting those towards the end. Vice versa, if I have some scenes for the beginning, I'm going to start getting those in the appropriate place on the timeline. I can start really just getting a rough idea of where everything's going to sit with each other, where certain scenes and clips work well with one another, because when you're out on a trip and maybe you filmed for a whole week or even longer, you're going to have multiple different scenes and you can't just chronologically edit them in whatever order you filmed them. I mean, you could, but I personally like to try and build them out that will work very well with one another. None of them being too similar, none of them being too much of the same thing, keeping it nice and interesting and moving through that edit just roughly to see how it's going to play out. There are a few key aspects I like to keep in mind when I am structuring my video. The first is going to be direction of movement. I think if you're looking for a video that has a really nice flow to it, it's vital that you keep the direction of movement in the same from one clip to another. This can be in the form of camera movement, and maybe you had some nice slide going left to right in your one clip. The next clip would flow a lot better if it mimicked the same slide and you had that left to right movement again in your next shot. This can be for anything. It can be a push forward or a pull back. It can be for a pan up. Any type of camera movement that you have in your shots, pairing them next to each other is going to really create a nice seamless flow. Not to mention later down the line you could add some speed ramp transition, which is going to make those clips flow together even better. The second one is the movement of the actual subject in your footage. So if you have a person walking from one direction to the other, your next clips should maintain that same direction of movement, because if it doesn't and you have someone walking this way and then the next shot they're walking the opposite way, that's going to give the feeling of them returning to where they just came from, which is fine if you are going for that, but if you are trying to show someone flowing and arriving somewhere, it is much better to keep each one of these little directions of movement flowing in the same way. Here's a pro tip, because when you're out in the field, it's very hard to make sure that everything is going in the same direction. You really don't know what's going to be played next to each other, and when you're out on a multi-day shoot, you're just not going to keep track of this. So we have two hacks available for us here. The first one being that you can actually reverse one of your clips in Filmora. So if we had a clip where we were pushing forward and we wanted to pair that with a clip that we were pulling back, by reversing it, it's going to be that opposite motion and those clips are going to flow much nicer together. We obviously have some limitations with this. If there's any sort of movement in your shots, like someone walking, all of a sudden they're going to be walking backwards, or if there's waves breaking on the beach, the waves are going to be going backwards. Anything that would have movement is going to be a dead giveaway, so just look out for it. Our second hack and our other option is that we can actually flip the clips horizontally. So if there is some form of movement, this is often a better option, because if someone is walking in one direction and then they're walking in the other direction in your other shot, by flipping it horizontally, they're going to be both walking in the same direction, and there shouldn't be any notice to the movement or the difference unless there are any obvious things that wouldn't make sense if they were flipped. Something else I like to do is a lot of my beginning shots for certain videos is I'll have slow pushes in a lot of my angles, and towards the end I'll have slow pulls out. This also just gives the viewer a sense of arriving into that video and then leaving that video again. If you don't have pushes or pulls in a lot of the shots that you want to use for your beginning and ending, Another simple tip is that you can actually add digital zoom in or digital zoom out in Filmora by using some simple keyframing techniques, and you can have that digital movement just giving that feeling a little bit more. It's important in this process of getting your rough cut together that you're not too specific. Let things kind of just find a general area that they might want to be. You don't need to cut them to the exact length. I won't really start introducing things like slow motion or any other final editing techniques. It's just a rough idea of how you kind of want the structure and form of your video to be, where you want certain scenes and how they like to play out. I hope this video was helpful and that you guys got a good idea of how I like to cut up my travel videos and start structuring them. I will see you in the next one.